The future of progressive radio. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live Monday, June 10th. We're here to burn it all down, says my next guest, Jamira Burley. You've been here before. You know her. You love her. Internationally recognized speaker, social justice advocate, next-gen social impact consultant, guest host on this very channel, in studio here for the next hour to talk about a host of issues, including just tear it down. So you were telling me millennials might want to build things, like go through the normal process.
I think my generation was still very similar to let's see if we can work within systems. If we can't, we'll still organize externally. And I think Gen Zers are just like, it hasn't worked. Let's start all over again. Burn it down.
That
scares me. I think it's kind of interesting. I think it's going to force all of us to reevaluate what we think we need in order to survive and operate as a country.
What scares me about that is that Trump's victory in some way was fueled by people who just wanted to burn the system down.
Because they're sick of the system never doing anything that helps and benefits them.
I think there's no silver lining to Trump except for the fact, and it's not a silver lining.
There's no silver lining.
The one thing it has, I don't know if it's because of Trump, frankly. I don't know if it's because of other politicians on the far left that have made me say, why can't we do certain things? Like people for years, about health care for all. Like, why can't we have Medicare for all? Why can't we take care of our older Americans in a much better way? Because my mom's going through things now where she's selling every asset she had in her entire life that she acquired, that she was going to give to my sister's grandkids and stuff, just gone. Spend it all on medical bills. And how do we live in a country like that? Why are we not having these prescription drug costs? Why are we not talking about putting a cap on the cost? No one wants to, socialism. Well, other countries do it, and there's a reason why their drug costs.
And they're thriving.
Right. So we've got to think, I think there are too many people who've been used to living within this little self-created paradigm, little box. And I think many, more and more are woke to break through that box and go like, why can't we do this?
Yeah, why not? I mean, you saw that with the Parkland students, right? Who were like, sympathy isn't enough. We are in a country that constantly says that we can't redo the Second Amendment, or we can't reevaluate what that means in the context of mass shootings. And I think that is a reflection of what that generation is very much about, which is the fact that we are at a time where why not is asked more often than not, and the answers we're getting from our politicians just aren't enough.
Absolutely. When I talk to even progressives, and it's not limited to age, really, it isn't. It's there are people who are older who are now like, let's just tear the
down.
Old ways down, and they'll say, why can't we have Bernie Sanders Medicare for all, which gets rid of all private health insurance companies? And instinctively I go, that's going to be crazy to do. But then I'm like, well, maybe there's a way to get to that point. But there are others who are younger, like, just do it. Why can't we just do this now? And I'm like, all right, I get it, because
prime example, I was having a conversation with 4 millennials yesterday about taxes, right? And the idea of paying taxes.
You don't want to pay taxes anymore.
No, I'm down for paying taxes because it helps with social services, like streets and all of that.
Right.
Anyway, so one of the things that came up that I had no idea was this idea that the reason why the government already has all your tax information. Why isn't it automatic, right? Why do we have to go to H&R Blocks and to the TurboTax of the world? Why can't the government just automate it? And it's because the lobbying companies of these industries lobby the government to prevent us from actually having a government that is not only transparent, but is operating in a way that's actually benefit to the citizens versus creating all these different industries in order for the big business to benefit off of our pockets.
I like
BS.
that. I like that idea, and that's interesting. Everything in our policies have another side to them that are there. And sometimes you know why they're there, and sometimes you don't know what's going on. And so much of the big business politics hopes that we don't get engaged, that we don't get involved,
that we don't read,
that we check it, right, that you check it. Because the less of us involved, the better it is for the big Republicans and the big companies to control things in terms of policy, because it doesn't affect you, but they're profiting off it. And so let's talk about, there's a bunch of issues I want to talk about, from the 2020 race to the 2020 race.
How many more people have gotten in the race since the last time we talked?
Well, first I want to talk, though, about the Central Park 5, because there's a lot more press going on. There's a great mini-series on Netflix called When They See Us, which is remarkable. And I think everyone listening to this show, I imagine you know what the Central Park 5 are. If you don't, as a reminder, there are 5 black and brown teenagers between 14 and 16 who were wrongly convicted of raping a jogger, Trisha Melly, here in New York City in 1989. And ultimately, they were their convictions were overturned. They were literally exonerated because Matthias Reyes not only admitted to it, his DNA, they tested it later after he admitted to it, was the right DNA, and these young kids had no DNA at all. And if you watched either the documentary for Ken Burns 2012 or this new Netflix series, When They See Us, you see how the police coerced these kids and lied. I mean, they literally made things up for these kids. Some of them didn't even know the other kids. They gave them the names of their other defendants. And you see now them doing a lot of interviews. Yusuf Salam, Antron McCrae, Ray Santana, Corey Wise, and Kevin Richardson were the 5. And now they're getting, and thankfully in 2014, they did receive compensation.
Yeah, but I mean, how much money is your life worth?
Right.
Your childhood.
I agree. There's no money of that. But when you were growing up, you're younger. When you were growing up, did you hear about the Central Park 5?
Yes. I remember hearing about the Central Park 5 because I remember my mother being afraid to let us go out after dark. Right. And I remember not just because there was just it was unsafe, but the idea that at any time we had an interaction with the police, that it could go wrong, that we could be labeled or put into a situation that had nothing to do with our own actions. And I remember being constantly kept in the house for long periods of time. But I had no context of it until I got much older and really started to understand the criminal justice system and understand more after they finally were released and the charges were erased from their record. And I remember thinking how many other people are just like that, how many other people have fallen through the cracks and their stories have not been told and they haven't received compensation, and how many people have had the book thrown at them just because they happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
That last part I thought of so much. Like, we know about this story now and they've been exonerated, but how many other young poor brown and black kids are in prison right now? And they'll say they're innocent and people just sure, everyone says they're innocent. In reality, they actually were, because these young guys never admitted to their guilt, even for parole hearings. They stayed in and served their full terms.
Which is like, who would do that?
Right.
Yeah, who would do that knowing that if they just admitted to it, they'd probably get a lesser sentence?
They refuse to. And here is the director of the Netflix, Ava DuVernay. Is that pronounced correct? Lauren knows. Ava DuVernay, who's Oscar-nominated director. And here she is talking about When They See Us and the impact on the family. And I want to get your reaction. Here's clip number 5, please.
I think it's so important that people see the process, and that's why I spent a whole episode, the first episode, to really bring you into the rooms, because you'll hear again and again from the side that opposes the truth of what actually happened. Well, how could you sign something if you didn't do it? Why would you say something if it wasn't true? I think what it's really important to explore and to understand is the power dynamics that happen in a room when you are, poor, black, young, or brown, and you are in a room with a white authority figure who is a police officer who's telling you, do these things and I will help you, do these things and it'll be okay. So it's really not, a difficult math to understand how 1 + 1 equals, these boys basically signing their lives away. And so, the time taken to explore what each boy went through, so that they're not just a monolith. They're not a big group called the Central Park 5 and you don't know who they are, why they did what they did. Our goal was to bring you into the rooms to recapture these boys' humanity and that of their families. We know that when you incarcerate one person, you incarcerate their family.
So, and there's a bunch there, but there was one thing she said early on, and if you see the documentary or the series and the people back it up, I mean, these young kids were 14, 15, and Corey Wise was 16. They kept them in the room with no parents in most cases. They would, for 24 hours, no food, badgering them till they signed statements they actually dictated essentially for them, returning the parents away, and then used one of the parents to try to pressure their other kid because the parent had a criminal prior, and they were using that against them. And the cops were so sinister and so devious in what they did. The prosecutors of different level of sinister and devious, these guys in this room knew what they were doing. They were forcing these young black and brown kids to sign confessions for things they never did. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I remember seeing a clip of Corey, and I remember the clip is him on at trial, and he's in the witness booth, and they ask him, well, why would you sign? And he's like, I just wanted to go home.
Right.
Like, we look at this story oftentimes, and we see who the men are now, and they're grown men, but they were babies. They were put in situations that even grown men today couldn't be able to uphold. And it reminds me of the fact that we are in a time where you literally see politicians to refer to Jared and like other members of the Trump family as boys, young men who don't understand, who don't know. Like, you shouldn't blame them for not knowing enough about politics or breaking the law.
Right.
But yet these young men the book was thrown at them, the prison system was thrown at them, and their lives and the lives of their family were just ruined.
It's beyond heartbreaking to watch what happened to them, and think about what you said, first of all, the idea of how many other kids has this happened to, but to understand that our police were working in this system, and this had to be their normal MO. This was their way of dealing with, got black and brown kids, we're going to throw whatever we want at them. And there was a lot of pressure at the time. Crime was high, 1989, and they felt a lot of pressure to get something. And what's remarkable, when you look at it through the documentary and the show, but I watched the documentary as well, the DNA of the kids were not anywhere on the jogger.
There was no evidence.
Nothing. There was so you have a rape and no DNA at all. Nothing.
It's not even no DNA. You had a DNA and it didn't match any of the people that you were
right. It was
claiming.
not inclusive, and the person they had that was not theirs. They knew that, and they still went forward. And one of the prosecutors, Linda Fairstein, said, "Well, there's a sixth kid involved who did the rape kid," and literally just making stuff up to support a conclusion that they had in advance.
I want people to realize when they watch this that New York is not the exception. It's actually the norm. We're seeing constant examples of police chiefs and police officers coming out where they have put false evidence on crime scenes, that have lied on individuals and have been convicted. And so it's really indicative of the entire justice system, that it's all broken, which is why Gen Zs are like, burn it all down, because it isn't working. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people behind bars who've copped to plea deals for crimes that they've never committed.
And I want to play a clip of Reverend Al Sharpton that Ava actually tweeted out yesterday as well. And when Corey Wise, who was only 16 at the time, the others were 14 and 15, so they were charged and they were sentenced as children, minors, I should say, not children, to about 7 years. He was just 16. He just made it a few months older. He got sentenced as an adult of 13 years. He went to Rikers, a 16-year-old kid.
Which is crazy because they're now trying to say that Paul Manafort shouldn't go there.
I was thinking of just Corey Wise. I'm like, and so when Corey Wise gets released for being exonerated, still no one would hire the guy. I mean, he was in prison, I think, for 13 years. He was only a human being for 16 before that, had no skills. So Reverend Al's National Action Network was the only place that would hire him. So here's Reverend Al talking about this, clip number 6, please.
And part of the suffering that those 5 young men went in jail for something they didn't do. Corey Weiss, who worked here because he couldn't get a job anywhere else when he got out. We stood with him and his mama all those years.
That's right.
But don't miss this. Their families suffer. Don't ever forget that their mamas had to get up in the middle of the night and catch buses to ride out to a prison and wait online and empty their pocketbooks and go through the humiliation and the degradation of visiting their sons in jail charged with rape. Nothing more serious than that. And they went through that for years. When in fact the children were not guilty of anything.
So we've talked before about your own family story, that you have siblings and your father who went to jail, and Reverend Al was talking about the impact on the family. When you hear him saying that, the impact on the family, does that resonate as something you experienced yourself, and what can you share about it?
Yeah, it's like an inhumane situation that you experience every single time you go and visit a loved one in prison.
What's it like? Share.
Well, when I first started visiting my brothers in prison, I couldn't have been older than 7 or 6. And we used to bring my little brother, who's 4 years younger. They would check his diaper. They would strip him down to check his diaper. They would make me take off my shoes, and they would make my mother lift up her bra underneath her shirt and shake it. So those are the kind of things you have to do in order to go and see a loved one. And we only really talk about that part, but we also don't talk about how the prison industrial complex is actually like $1 billion industry, and how the cost that individuals, families have to put out in order to stay in contact, whether that's sending mail, whether that's sending supplies for them, whether that's getting phone calls. There's now a whole app where I can communicate with my brother. It costs me $1 every time I send him a text message or an email.
$1?
Yeah. So
But in prison, he's able to get that?
He's able to get it now because now there's a whole new industry for it. And so those things are created. It's the craziest thing ever. But it's definitely, you're frozen in time. Your life doesn't really move. And when it does move, by the time the person gets released, they feel like they haven't moved anywhere. For instance, my two oldest brothers were sentenced to 13 and 14 years. They were 15 and 16 at the time. They were released before iPhone. And by the time they came back, to a time where buses were talking and like people had, so it's a huge reality check that no one tells how you actually recover and how you get reintegrated into society in a real way. And I know people who were guilty who weren't able to find jobs. Imagine people like Corey, who was innocent and still wasn't able to get access to employment.
Well, the one big thing, and if you see the Netflix special, is that when the younger guys were released, because Corey was longer, they had to report as a sex offender.
Oh my God.
Every month. And they had much more limits on them because they were convicted of rape. Mm-hmm. And people didn't want to hire them. They had to lie all the time to try to get jobs. So it really captures the humanity of these people, so that it's more heartbreaking when, I mean, anybody watching this knows what the ending is, but it's more heartbreaking when you get there knowing, oh my God, they were completely innocent. They had nothing to do with it. They just went to the park one night with friends, the wrong night for them. Mm-hmm. And when you watch the way it's laid out in facts in the documentary or the Netflix special, there's no way an honest lawyer or prosecutor could have said it was them. When you get rid of DNA evidence, but their stories didn't even match up. Nothing matched up. They were making up. They gave them the names of the other people, except for Yusuf Salam and Corey Wise. They didn't even know each other, the other people. They were like, and Ray Santana was there. He's like,
literally,
yeah,
you
Ray
found
Santana was
random
there.
people and just coupled them all together.
And in the, I have to play this clip for you. In the Netflix special, there's a lot about Trump and the actors playing the mom saying, and Yusuf Salam said he recently at NAACP on Friday, he was actually tears in his eyes saying, Donald Trump put a bounty on our head. And the mother going, look, they're calling for my kid to be killed. But there's a clip in the Netflix special, which I had never seen before. And I played it, I think, last week. And I want to get your reactions. Donald Trump, 1989, around the same time, there was a special on race in America. And he's interviewed. And listen to this, clip number 7.
A well-educated black has a tremendous advantage over a well-educated white in terms of the job market. And I think sometimes a black may think that they don't really have the advantage or this or that, but in actuality, today, currently, it's a great, I've said on occasion, even about myself, if I was starting off today, I would love to be a well-educated black because I really believe they do have an actual advantage today.
So there is Donald Trump. That's like white victimhood, just a billionaire, whatever he was at the time. If I could come back today, the advantage of being a well-educated black. What's your reaction to hearing this?
I mean, this is a man who got a free education from an Ivy League university, who got his father to bribe a doctor so he wouldn't go to war. This is the same man who got $1 million from his father to start a company. I don't know any well-educated black man that has ever gotten that advantage. And also, it's like, clearly he was spitting falsehoods even then, because current data now says that a black man with a college degree is still less likely to be hired than a white man with a criminal record. So it's like, that's actually not factually true.
It's probably even worse then.
Yeah.
Here, and in this special, Brian Gumbel asked Spike Lee in 1989, he plays that clip for him and he goes, here's his reaction. Here's clip number 8.
What's being black in America mean to you?
Well, I certainly don't agree with that garbage that Donald Trump said, that if he could be reborn or reincarnated, he want to come back to the educated black. Because we start out, I mean, Brian, I didn't believe he said that. That's crazy.
He wanted clearly to curse and really say what it. Yeah, and this is 1989, so
I
this is
know.
Spike. This is just do the right thing. Is just out. Sort of like he's not the Spike Lee, and he's known now as being outspoken. There's this young Spike Lee going. I cannot believe what I just saw.
He can have not have said that. There's no way he said that.
To say that, but that's really where white victimhood comes from. The idea that somehow every other race has an advantage. That's 1989.
Yeah.
Today, that's typical Fox News television. That white people and white Christian men, especially, are somehow victims, and everything's about. And white Christian men who are straight are the biggest victims in our society.
Of course,
And-
straight pride is
Right.
coming your way.
Right, exactly right. But Trump plays on that, and to us, it seems like it's whining and a sign of weakness and it's pathetic. To them, it resonates as truthful. It's a sign of a strong man who speaks his mind. I think this is pathetic garbage.
It is, but he's learned early on the dog whistling, right? He learned it early on what words, what phrases would get his supporters that we now know riled up, who feel like everyone is out to get them because they happen to be from a privileged background or happen to be white. And so it's scary because we see it playing out on the national stage and unfortunately the international stage in many ways. But the fact that he, at that time, who claims to not be a racist, thought to put, I think he paid $65,000 to put it on the front page of the New York Times.
He put it, well, it definitely was a full page ad
Yeah, it
and
was
a
a
bunch of
full-page ad.
papers. I can't
Yeah,
remember
so
the exact number.
he paid a lot of money for a crime that for an incident that he didn't know the victim. He wasn't associated with any of the family members. And the fact that he felt the need to do that, I think is reflective of his actual values and how he treats people. And we saw that.
And at the time he put the full page ad, bring back the death penalty, and it was obviously in response to this. These kids had not been convicted of anything. And so Trump's always like, oh, what about presumption of innocence? It doesn't apply to black people.
Of course not. We're guilty. And murder these kids. And I think what's crazy is that data says that, we just saw recently a police officer handcuff a 12-year-old and he said he didn't realize the kid was 12. Data shows that people oftentimes don't view black boys as children. Right. And so the fact that he was willing to do that to 15 and 14-year-olds, it's disgusting.
Well, I'm glad it comes up and people don't forget it. And Donald Trump's conduct as president has made it easy to remember for the things he's done. So let's take a quick break.
Gotta love TV.
That's right. So let's take a
127.
You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're here with Jamira Burley talking about a bunch of issues. So let's talk about this celebration of ignorance that Donald Trump has given license to in the GOP. And I really think part of it's him. This is Congressman, Republican, Rob Woodall from Georgia on KCDC on MSNBC asked a simple question about 2 months later, have you read the Mueller report? Because it's your job. You're paid like $180,000 a year to be in Congress. You thought maybe your job, maybe you'd read a report. Maybe take an hour out of your day and read most of it at least. Here's clip number one.
Have you read the Mueller report?
I have not.
Why not?
I said when we started this conversation that I trusted Mr. Mueller. He took a lot of slings and arrows throughout this process, but every U.S. attorney I knew said this is a man of great integrity.
Yeah.
He's going to lead this,
so why not read
this
the report?
investigation. Well, I have a concern when you put the entire power of the United States Justice Department behind anything. You can achieve an agenda. You can drive a message. All of those.
So you think the Mueller report was just driving an agenda?
Well,
that there's
no.
nothing in there that's worth figuring out.
Well, you tell me what that investigation is that Mueller said I didn't get a chance to do. He had a chance to do it all. He had the full
but I'm
faith
saying,
and
like, we're
credit.
talking about the report, right? Okay, so fine. We're not talking about going beyond the Mueller report. I'm saying, why not read? I mean, there's 10 things in there on obstruction where he said, hey, the president may have obstructed justice here, Congress. He seemed to say you need to figure that out. I mean, why not?
Well, he didn't say to Congress you need to figure that out, right? Obstruction is not a political issue. Obstruction is a criminal issue.
He did say to Congress, he was like, I can't make a decision about this because I'm not allowed to constitutionally indict a sitting president of the United States. So Congress, over to you.
That's right. Congress, over to you if you want to pursue impeachment proceedings.
So it went from, he didn't say that. He did? I didn't read it, so I don't know. What if Congressman Maxine Waters, 2 months after the report yesterday, was on TV and asked if you read the report yet? And she goes, no, I didn't read it. How do you think Trump would have responded and the GOP would have responded to the idea of her admitting, I didn't read this report?
That could not have been a congressman.
He was. He's from Georgia. He's been around for a while.
Oh my God, the
Rob
world is
Woodall,
going to shit.
I mean, if a black member of Congress were to say what the white privilege guy just said here, that I didn't read the report, because that's white privilege, folks. Because if Maxine Waters said that,
well, I would actually say it's a Republican thing.
Clark,
because if any Democrat who said that that if Trump was guilty and that he should be arrested or he should be impeached, had followed that up with, but I have not read the report, I think they all would be kind of like thrown to the wall, stoned.
Right.
But I think what's irritating is the fact that even if you haven't physically read it, you have an entire staff that can give you the Cliff Notes. Utilize your staff to tell you what the big points are in the report. Like, your job is to actually, you commission the report to read it and to tell us, of the American people, that where we should move forward. And the fact that he hasn't even taking the time to read the report, even when he's on the toilet, I think is so disrespectful.
He's on TV and he's going there to talk about how Trump is innocent. And honestly, it would make it so much more persuasive to say, I've read the report and he's innocent.
No, I think they're trying to save themselves. I think they're trying to use that as a potential out later on to say, well, I never read the report, so I didn't have all the information. I think it's bullshit. I think it's legit bullshit.
That could be a whole nother level. I didn't think about that.
Watch, there's definitely going to be a Congress member who say that they haven't read it now, but then a few months later when more stuff comes out, they're going to be like, well, I didn't read it then, but I just read it now. And now I think, yeah. This is our country.
So what I know, and these are people, it's only 435 members of Congress, and there's one of them who has not read the report. Even Lindsey Graham said he didn't read the whole report, so at least he inferred that he read some of it. This guy's like, no, I didn't read it. Why would I read that? I got busy. I got to read Trump's tweets. That takes all my time.
Well, Lindsay, I'm curious, what part did you not read? Is it the part where all the obstruction of justice is? Like, I'm just curious. Did you only read the blackout stuff that we haven't had access to yet? What?
I don't know what Lindsey Graham did, but he's chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Not Intel. Judiciary Committee. And you would think if anyone's going to read it, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is so vitally important in that process. So today, Gerald Nadler and House Judiciary, they had hearings. They were like show hearings, but it felt like impeachment. It didn't get much press because of the helicopter crash here. But in it, he had former Nixon White House counsel John Dean. Yeah. And I'll just play a short clip of what John Dean said about this being a roadmap for Congress. Let's hear clip number 2, please.
The last time I appeared before your committee was July 11, 1974, during the impeachment inquiry of Richard Nixon. Clearly, I'm not here today as a fact witness. I accepted the invitation to come here today because I hope I can give a little historical perspective on the Mueller report. In many ways, the Mueller report is to President Trump what the so-called Watergate Roadmap, officially titled the Grand Jury Report and Recommendation Concerning Transmission of Evidence to the House of Representatives, was to President Richard Nixon. Stated a little differently, Special Counsel Mueller has provided this committee with a roadmap.
Mm-hmm. I like that. But do you think they'll begin impeachment in either of our lifetimes? I mean, you're younger, so it could be perhaps in yours or not mine. At what point should they begin impeachment now? What do you think?
I think if they don't begin impeachment procedures, it is going to cripple people's faith in the government. And it's going to beg the question of what's the purpose of Congress, if not to uphold the law, if not to hold people accountable. Like, why are you in your office if you're not going to do what you asked for this report? Mueller told you the next step that you needed to take. And now you're saying that it's too politically charged. It's always going to be too politically charged. And the question I would beg Nancy Pelosi, I like to think that she has a great strategy, is that if we don't begin impeachment procedures and he wins again, or he doesn't win again, what is this going to stop any other person who runs for office from taking information from a foreign government? None, because we set a precedent, right? That it's the right thing to do. That is okay.
I fear that if they don't do impeachment inquiry at least, historians will look back at Trump and the guy wins re-election and becomes more of the dictator and king he wants. And they say, but Democrats had an opportunity to potentially stop that by doing an impeachment inquiry. They had control of the House and they did not do it. And that's part of it. When you talked about earlier, younger people saying that to burn it down or they want things different than the old type of politics, is not, at least doing an impeachment inquiry and impeachment hearings of Trump, feed into the sense to younger people that these parties are all the same. This doesn't mean anything.
By not doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what a lot of people believe. They think that parties actually mean nothing, that you still have people on both sides of the aisle that are fighting for their own individual interests, and oftentimes is at the backbone of the minority and those who have least access to resources or recourse. And so I think a lot of people are losing hope with government, which is why you see people marching more who are finding other ways to organize and get out and actually protest. But I think people have lost faith in the traditional institution of government. And I think that's problematic because that's exactly what Trump wants us to do.
It is.
Because it opens the door for him to, be an asshole or a dictator.
No, but he's both.
Yeah.
Is AOC going to say that? I mean, do you think does she reach younger people?
Yeah, but I think, does she have the power?
No, I mean, it's one member of Congress.
Yeah, exactly.
As a freshman member,
but I think she has the ability to influence, but does she have the power to actually create any real change or move any real policy within the party? Debatable.
So when you look at what's going on in the 2020 now, we're having the media cover stuff. Last week, Trump gave a speech at D-Day, and he didn't veer from the teleprompter, and people in the media went like, "Oh my God, he's almost look, he's like a president now." Meanwhile,
sounds
President
like Van Jones.
But it wasn't. It was like a whole bunch of them going like, "Oh my God." I never remember them going, "Obama was remarkable today. He didn't stray from the teleprompter even once to embarrass America."
Because he had Biden saying that he was articulate. So there's
that's
that.
right. So, but my concern is that here's not even a concern. This is the facts. Donald Trump's been good for ratings. He's been good for revenue for these networks. Ratings equals revenue.
Yep.
And for the for-profit media that we live around that surrounds us now in the studio, CNN, MS, and Fox News, he's been great for them. They've expanded coverage. People have gotten raises. I know people are getting hired. And if he loses, ratings will contract to a certain degree. And some people will lose jobs, and some people will not get bonuses and not get hired. And I have grave concerns that even producers who hate Trump, they have to think about their family and themselves, and I understand that part. And even subtly, even if it's unconscious bias, help Donald Trump win election. And I'm really worried about that going to 2020. Am I nuts, or do you think it's
I don't think you're nuts. I think because we see that with some of the coverage, and we're just like, the media has not learned. The media contributed to Donald Trump winning the election, and they still have not learned by the coverage that they're applying to him. And I think my frustration with the media is that how long do they think that this can continue, right? That people are going to continue to tune in? Because I used to be an avid person that watched the news, that paid very much attention, like hours a day, I don't watch it anymore. I can't
Really?
physically tolerate it anymore. Like it's actually harmful. I feel very stressed out, and while this may give them the boost that they need, but what is the long-term effects of having a Donald Trump as president? Not just here domestically, but internationally. Like he's literally, like, you have our political supporters and countries around the world that are not even sharing information and data with us, that are afraid that Donald Trump is actually going to share that information and data with the world. So I think it's pretty scary. He's pretty scary. And I think the media might be
I'm very
setting
concerned.
us all up
And
to
here's
fail.
where the subtle things come in, because he gives a speech. It's fine. He reads off the teleprompter, doesn't screw up, doesn't pee himself or anything, right?
Oh my God, pee himself?
He doesn't pee himself. But hours before, literally hours before he's in Normandy at this
Yeah.
big D-Day thing, he tweets that Rachel Maddow's dying in the ratings and how good that is and how the New York Times dying is
Yeah.
great. And there's no context. Like, instead of going just hours before Trump delivered this speech on the 7th anniversary of D-Day, he took to Twitter to slam radio shows and TV shows he doesn't like. And I've said that I think Trump had more in common with the people we were fighting on D-Day than our own American soldiers, because he's more lined up with these fascists and dictators.
Yep.
And what else?
The
doesn't get
irony of it, right? Yeah.
And what else doesn't get covered is Friday, the job. Every month we have the jobs report, the first Friday of every month, telling you the month before how jobs were. The May report. Did you hear much about the May report?
No.
It was horrible. Economists expected 180,000 jobs to be created. How many were created? 75,000. Not even half of what they expected.
Wow.
And job growth wasn't there. And they revised downwards the 2 months before by over 10%. So I'm not saying we're on the verge of a recession, but something is happening to our economy. And it seems to be slightly contracting. That got nothing. Because that's subconscious bias. Don't cover the bad news. Just cover Trump the baby. And he didn't pee himself. And he came back and he saved us from the tariffs that he created.
But I think that's the thing. I think Trump has learned how to manipulate
Absolutely.
the media.
He knows they do.
Yeah, he changes up his own behavior whenever there's bad news about to come, or he sparks controversy over here in order for the media to cover it. There has to be a time where the media smartens up and start giving America the full picture of what's actually happening. And I don't know if that's going to happen, because we know the media is in the business of making money and not in telling the truth.
Jeff Zucker was quoted last year in Vanity Fair saying that people keep saying, why do we cover Trump all the time? And he said, because when we stop covering him, people turn the channel. And
because people want to be happy.
Right, no, but the point is, we're going to keep covering him because he's good for business. Because turning the channel is the determining factor for Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN. Not good journalism, not teaching people things, not investigative journalism, but people turn the channel so we can't cover anything else. That's why his tweets, stupid tweets, get coverage night after night.
But I'm curious, though, is it just because they're not covering Trump, or because they're putting something on that is an interest to the rest of American population? So it's like, what are you replacing it with?
Well,
that's what would be my question. Is like, one doesn't always equivalate to the other. Like, just because you take Trump off doesn't automatically mean people are going to turn the channel. Maybe you just aren't producing good content otherwise.
Well, it could be something else, but in this whole tariff thing, it was another example of Donald Trump created a phantom menace, these tariffs, and we're going to hurt the economy, and then saved us from the phantom menace. A week later, and he takes a victory lap, and of course, right-wing media go, oh my God, you're the greatest. You're a genius. And even some of the people in the middle, they go, well, he made this deal. And nothing has been, we have a press release. He lied about certain, I just an expert on, he lied about the whole, Mexico's going to buy goods from you immediately. So this is what concerns me. It troubles me. All right, let's take a break, my friend. We're going to come back, talk about things that trouble me even more, like something in Alabama. Besides the abortion law, there's something else, a nuanced thing we're going to talk about that's horrible. Let's take a break and come back right after this. At this point, the question is not who connected to Donald Trump as a criminal. The question is anyone connected to Donald Trump who's not a criminal?
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
SiriusXM Progress.
This is the Dean Obeidallah Show, exclusively on SiriusXM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. Monday, June 10th. Jamira Burley's here.
Hey.
So, hey, she's on Instagram. She talks to me while Instagramming and doing all the things. Snapchat? No. Anyone use Snapchat anymore?
No one uses Snapchat anymore.
All right, thank God. So, before we talk about this horrible Alabama law, when you look at the 2020 field right now, where do you feel the energy really is? So the new Iowa poll showing Buttigieg and Liz Warren really moving up. Despite the media narrative that Biden's dropping, and in fact, the last few polls in Iowa, he's exactly the same or higher. So that's not really true. What's happening is you see others slide, like Beto's dropped a lot.
I didn't know Beto was still in the race.
He's still in the race. He's still there.
I know he's there.
But what do you think about Liz Warren leading now, and she's running a policy-based campaign? It's not a personal story campaign. It's, here are my policies. I got a policy for it. I got a plan for it, and here's how I'm going to pay for it.
Well, I think it's a both. She does a little bit of storytelling, but she doesn't use that as her entire backdrop. But I think people are appreciating people who are showing up with plans, not just saying, I have this great idea, but I'm going to tell you how I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to tell you where the money is going to come from, and I'm going to tell you how it's going to impact you as an individual. Her tool for student loan debt was phenomenal. Like, everyone on my Twitter line was telling me how much they were going to save. One guy was going to save nearly $50,000 in student loan debt.
Wow.
So, like, imagine if her plans, I think, really resonate with people, because it actually shows them how it's going to individually impact their lives, which is what I think was missing from 2016, is that people had great ideas, but you couldn't tell. People had no idea how that was going to impact their life, how their life was going to get better.
To me, I don't care if people like Liz Warren or not. I hope what she's doing is going to force every candidate to be very, very policy oriented, because I think that's very important. Because I'm not taking a position on the candidates on the show. I'm going to praise them when they do things good. I'm trying to be objective, and they do something I don't like. When Biden was saying, I'm still supporting the Hyde Amendment, I was very critical.
Hours later,
he made the right decision, and I don't think he's going to have to answer for it at all, to be honest, in the long run.
Yeah.
But I think I am happier when somebody evolves, even if it's opportunistic evolving over 24 hours. At least he evolved on this issue. But in any event, like, I was no problem criticizing him for saying I'm in favor. I'm like, that's not being pro-choice anymore to me. You've got to be. You can't say someone has a right, but we're not going to have the government can fund everything you need for your health care. But this issue, you're subscribing to essentially what I call Christian Sharia law. So you can't have that.
It's not the separation of church versus state. It actually is bringing the church into the conversation of politics, which is funny, because every one of us, regardless of your religious or political views, give into the government. This is all of our money. It's not just some random bank in the tree that we're pulling from. So I find Biden interesting. I do like the fact that he evolved. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just trying to get politicians either on the record or on camera of the things that they're committing to, because then we can hold their feet to the fire later.
I'm hoping, like, Buttigieg moved up a lot.
Oh, he's still in the race too?
Yes, he's doing well in Iowa, but he is still lacking on policy. If you Google, like I did over the weekend, because this is what I do, Google thing, there are articles now that have taken together his various policy answers and put it into one cohesive article. So you can read, he's like, for Medicare for all, but in over time. What we need him to do, though, is really articulate detailed policies. I had Julian Castro on last week, who now has several, like a policing policy.
Yeah, he's getting good.
Right, it's much more detail-oriented. And that's what separates you. When you're at 1%, you can't change your personal story, so that's not resonating. Do the right thing. Change your policy story. Here are my policy initiatives. And would you rather win and lose on what you really stand for, what you're going to do, as opposed to hoping something's going to happen? I mean, so Julian had several new policy initiatives.
Castro is amazing. And the smart thing about Castro is the fact that he did design thinking. He met with community members. He met with organizations who focus, like Million Hoodies campaign. He met with the organizations who actually work on this issue. And then he designed the policy based on what he heard. And I think that's what politicians need to do more of. Like, actually go don't just meet with members of the community to let them just spill information at you and for you to give your story of self. Actually listen to what they want and design a policy that actually makes sense for that community. And not a lot of people are doing that well. Elizabeth is, Castro's doing it well. Biden is riding on the coattails of his past success, so we'll see.
So for you, it's about, people go on listening tours, but it's more than listening.
It's listening, it's hearing what people are saying, and then it's actually reflecting that in the policies you're creating. Because otherwise, why listen to them? Like, why go to those communities? Why pretend?
So how important is it? and I think I told you this, when Reverend Al, when I went to the NAN conference, he introduced everyone, and he introduced Liz Warren. He said, no one has called me more over the years than her. And I imagine the audience, because they love Reverend Al, they're there, it's his organization, probably appreciate that little comment to me was like, wow, he's saying this person, what they're going to tell you is for real because they've been earning it.
And they've been asking questions.
Right.
I think it's very important, and I think Senator Elizabeth Warren, let me honor her in her title, is recognizing that she's not the expert, and politicians aren't going to be the expert of all issues. And at this point, they probably can't hire a huge policy team. But what you can do is utilize your network, utilize the experts that you see on TV and that are in the community, and ask them what their community needs. They're not going to be representing. Like, I don't represent all millennials, but I can tell you, I can introduce you to some Latinos. I can introduce you to some Muslim individuals. I can introduce some to members of the LGBT community. And I think that's what more politicians need to do is like find the pockets of the different populations of America, actually have conversations around policy, and then reflect your policy agenda to what you're hearing from those in the community. And not just be making this stuff up in the back rooms with your two staff members who aren't from the communities that you're trying to impact.
Oh, that's very interesting that they write the policy based on someone like, who's got our black friend? Let's talk to him. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back. We'll have like a minute left. We'll come right back. More of the Dean Obadala Show.
Yeah.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dino Bidala Show. We're here with Jamira Burley. So, Jamira, people want to, we only like a minute and a half left. So, if people want to follow you, want to know what's going on, Instagram, where do they go?
I'm
Twitter?
on Instagram and Twitter at Jamira Burley. So that's JamiraBurley. Or you can go to my website at www.jamiraburley.com.
Check it out. She's got everything.
I'm around.
She's around. I am not around the next 2 nights, folks. I hope you'll miss me. It's not a vacation. I'm going to Ohio. I have the federal lawsuit I've talked about in the past against the neo-Nazis at the Daily Stormer. So we're having a hearing in federal court. And hopefully I'll come back Thursday and share some good news that we got a judgment against the Nazis who fabricated tweets saying I was involved in a bombing and then wanted to kill me. And guess what? They all love Trump. And the whole thing was because I wrote an article slamming their beloved Trump and white supremacy. And this is the United States of America in Donald Trump. So when some people say, if Nancy Pelosi doesn't do this, I might not vote in 2020. Well, I can tell you it's unlikely you're a minority because for the rest of us, we have skin in the game because this is very real and very personal to us. So any last words, my friend, before we go?
Pay attention and vote.
Perfect. We got a lot more. Should be saying that a lot between now and next November 3rd, 2020. We got the primaries, though, in a few months. Talk to you on Thursday. Naira Hawk will be here the next 2 nights, so tune in.